Right, so my Halo Infinite campaign critique has been out for just under 2 months now, and thanks so much for the incredible support from those that have watched it. If you haven't done so, go check it out if you want to see me tear and embarrassingly find that game apart in far too much detail. If, like me, you're sticking around here, my plan is to analyse what's changed for Halo since I wrote that script, because a fair bit has, what in hindsight I might have said and done differently, and most importantly, evaluating what you people think. I'll be looking at some of the standout comments I've received in an effort to continue the really fascinating, surprising, and not so surprising discourse about a game that I should really stop thinking about. But I just can't kick the habit of picking at its corpse when some of these comments are getting me riled up, man. I'm coming in hot, let me tell you. So no more waffle, you get how the video works. Let's waste no more of your precious time and start with this one from LKN Ear, who says they will never forgive 343 for ruining this franchise, and they really wish a different studio would pick Halo up and just start from the end of Halo 3, erasing the embarrassing titles 343 made. Now, I picked this comment as I think it got the most likes out of a few quite similar options all expressing the same sentiment, that everything 343 have done should be wiped from history and the license loaned out elsewhere. And while I would not be at all opposed to another studio taking a crack at an otherwise very dead horse, in fact I'd encourage it, I think I err on the side of 343's games happened for better or for worse. Just ignoring their existence and pretending the franchise is in 2010 again is not the right move. You can't just wish the reality of 15 years worth of games away, even if they've done more damage to the franchise than good. But then the other reason I say that is that no matter how bad a franchise becomes, it can always be rescued. All it would take is the right team with the right story, and before you know it, it's back to its best. Just look at Andor. That's exactly what Halo needs right now, but like this person said, I don't know how easily I can forgive, and despite changing their name, my lack of trust in Halo Studios right now is all-encompassing.
It can't go on like this, can it?
It can.
So, Nature Valley Crunch Bar here says, hey kid, you can't tell which part of any Halo game a level takes place in. They're all forgettable. It's about the gunplay. Obviously talking about my point in the video that you can't tell any of the Halo Infinite levels apart. And I really like this comment because it meant that this guy stepped in to confront the idiocy and do my job for me with a pretty appropriate response leading with the fuck yes you can. And yeah, of course he's spot on here, and you can make countless other comparable examples to this one, like I did in the original video. If it's all about the gunplay, would you play a Halo game that takes place entirely in white and grey rooms? Obviously, the gunplay and game feel is tremendously important. It's a core pillar of the experience, and Infinite is very strong. But ceilings aren't held up by just a single pillar, no matter the strength. So don't act like the context behind the shooting isn't important or memorable. Yeah, so an antagonistic if ridiculous one there. Let's swiftly move on to this one from Kyle23, whose biggest gripe with the narrative is how it's written around the idea of being the two underdogs against everything and holding on despite hopeless odds. Except for the 120 Marines you can rescue and set up bases with, very good point. Those guys just don't feel like they exist at all within the tone of the narrative. Plus, it doesn't make a single difference to the overall game. Like they mentioned with the final mission here, it doesn't mean anything. They're just there. Purely a gameplay mechanic. Yeah, I really like this point, and that's something I didn't have time to talk about in the video, that the Marines you rescue in the open world kind of give you nothing, unless you bring them into battle, and maybe you'll get the occasional comedic line, which is top-notch in Infinite, by the way. But I love the suggestion here of getting the lore drops by talking to them after rescuing them instead of simply picking up a datapad. It would make the conflict feel more palpable, and like you're saving actual people. I also love the comparison to Halo 1 by Leroy Jenkins here. This is an excellent observation I've never really thought about. That, yeah, the Marines do slowly disappear throughout that campaign. I've always obviously felt the second half of CE is way more isolated and lonely feeling, but I've never actually engaged my stupid monkey noggin to put a finger on exactly why that is. Seeing the opposite in Infinite with a big concluding battle or something would have rewarded the player for their hard work regrouping the scattered UNSC forces with that sense of scale and grandeur the game is otherwise sorely lacking. So another missed opportunity, but love it when I learn new things from comments or they address things I didn't have time to mention. Great work, guys. Now this is a really cool comment from Stark Raving Mad 31, who says they had the displeasure of working on this game, reeled in by the same 2018 trailer that got everyone. A truly great team of wonderful developers completely upended by a mountain of tech debt and a leadership team that had no idea what a Halo game was. And so, yeah, it's just really cool to hear from someone who would have actually experienced the turmoil I discussed firsthand, and obviously back up the point I'm proving about an evidently talented group let down by a series of atrocious decisions. Now, obviously, I don't know if this person's telling the truth or not. They have left a subtle clue that they might have gone mad, but I'm telling myself they were involved because it's incredible to have someone who made this see my silly little video, and of course, just incredible to have anyone who backs up and agrees with what I said. So Neil O'Rourke 71 says stories need to end. And he's saying Halo as a whole doesn't necessarily need to end, but Master Chief's main story needs to take a break. The Halo universe is so rich you could make a compelling story anywhere, but when the creative direction is shackled by corporate psychopaths, back to the dying cow you go. Yep, and this is another pretty depressing one, but another I entirely agree with. Remakes aside, the next entirely new Halo game needs to be a spin-off in my opinion. Reignite the franchise by giving us something fresh and completely unencumbered by the last 15 years of agony. I don't think Master Chief's story necessarily has to end completely. There's no reason he couldn't be the protagonist of an excellent new game, but the unresolved cliffhanger of Infinite just leaves him in this unfortunate limbo of abandoned storylines, where they're either stuck creating a direct follow-on of an already 3-year-old game with a disappointing campaign, or going in a wholly new direction and having to worm their way out of those looming loose threads, just like Infinite had to do already with Halo 5. So, short answer is, yeah, the easiest and best solution is probably to give John a break, but equally the longer he's on one, the harder it'll be to bring him back in a sequel to an increasingly aging and forgotten game. No one's going to want to follow on to Infinite in 10 years' time. It's almost like they've written themselves into a franchise-killing corner after only just clumsily squirming out of the last one. Fuck it, just make spin-offs, who cares? Provericus627 writes in to say, maybe if the studio didn't name themselves after the character that killed Sergeant Johnson while trying to get Chief to wipe out all life in the galaxy, they would have had more success. And yeah, I actually did have a whole joke in the video originally about the irony of this as it played into the whole most ironic game of all time thing, but I cut it was clunky. But the irony is not lost on me of the self-fulfilling prophecy of naming your company after a villain from Bungie's games who consistently makes regrettable decisions based on their misguided beliefs which are instilled by their sinister overlord creators. It's just absolutely ludicrous, featuring Mystical. Seeing Red here talks about when I mentioned the pandemic in my video and says stop using it as such a sort of be-all end-all reason as to why game development went tits up. Out of all possible work environments, game development is one of the few barely affected by it, if anything. The attempts for different studios to get people back into the offices years later were significantly more noticeable. Now this is an interesting one because yeah, I don't know exactly how much the pandemic impacted the development of Halo Infinite. I wasn't there. I was quarantined, so I couldn't break into the studio anymore, but when the game was in crisis the summer before and then crunching for a release in late 2020, I'm pretty sure the most globally defining event of most of our lifetimes can't have helped much. It's not an excuse or exemption for the mess of Infinite. Like I said, the damage had been done long before that all kicked off, so I never claimed it was an end-all be-all reason. That's why I talked for ages about everything but the pandemic that impacted development and mentioned the thing itself just twice, and yet still as a disruption and distraction, you won't find much of a better one out there, whether they adjusted quickly or not, and there's plenty of research and reporting about the industry which backs this up. Changing the daily routines and workflows of everyone working on the game still would have been massively detrimental. Sure, probably not as much as for sports matches, but an important factor to note when discussing the creation of the game all the same, particularly as a factor when it comes to why the game was delayed, which is why I mentioned it in the first place, not as the sole reason the game is bad. Dark Henry Gone Dark talks about when I mentioned an admittedly intriguing time travel teaser when they say Master Chief's been gone for a few days and then Atriox travels back in time, whatever. And yeah, I do think I slightly regret my wording here. I think the point I was making, probably out of desperation to praise whatever little tiny little crumbs of interest I could scrounge out of the story, is that, yeah, time travel is stupid, but I don't know, maybe it would have been kind of cool to go back in time to the height of the Forerunner War or something. I'm not a massive lore expert, so I don't know exactly what that would mean, but at least it's something new and ambitious. But the reality of it is that whether you think this is intriguing or stupid, it doesn't matter, because we'll never get to see it now with Infinite's campaign DLC discontinued. Well, not discontinued, you can't continue something that never even started, but you know what I mean. Ugh, I was just desperate to be positive about something. But next we've got this one from Drywall Eater, who notes it's truly wild how they worked so hard to copy CE, but couldn't pick up so much of what made it work. It's the equivalent of having no Pillar of Autumn intro level, a dozen copies of Rescue the Marines, and ending just before the flood reveal with the promise that this facility is super scary, trust us, it'll be scary in the next game. And yeah, I agree, that game is still a lot better than this one. But with the looming inevitability of a CE remake, this just made me reflect on the fact that by the time we see that game in 2026, if it actually releases on time that is, it'll have been 11 years since the last game that wasn't trying to replicate CE, and I'm just kind of bored of it. Halo is so much more than the second mission of Combat Evolved, but this is what happens to dying franchises. They attempt to revert back to the most staple, core elements they can to desperately cling to the distilled, mythologized memory of what they once had. Because yeah, if people close their eyes and picture Halo CE, they may well picture this, but that's not what the whole game was by a long stretch. Yet Infinite seems to think so. At least a CE remake is guaranteed to have more environmental variety than Infinite, which isn't hard, because they'll be copying a 25-year-old game that far surpasses what Infinite serves up variety-wise. Right, I'm getting worked up again. Let's move swiftly on to this one from Mage1969, who says, so you played back-to-back through the game and you didn't go for the Scorpion gun after the first one? Hats off, yeah, and I have not once used the Scorpion gun. But I haven't played through the game just twice. No, I played through it 4 times for this video, on all 4 difficulties, mind you, and to confirm for those wondering, I have gone insane. I was going to do a lasso playthrough where I would have taken advantage of the Scorpion Gun glitch, but there is no way I'm putting myself through that level of agony for a game that I'm now completely sick of. But hey, here I am still talking about it like it's an X I can't move on from, so who knows, maybe one day. Rips Critical asks what the song is from the start of the video, because they seem to enjoy it quite a lot, and yeah, the song is on screen here. All the songs featured are in the credits, like this guy's pointed out for me. Cheers, dude. But I wanted to draw attention to this because I've seen a lot of people very kindly praising the music used and asking what certain tracks are called. It's really nice to hear because I put a lot of work into creating a kind of rhythm or momentum to the video through the music, as I like to do with all of my videos. It's something that's very important to me, so I hope the intended effect worked. But all I did was choose what fit and what went where. A huge amount of credit goes to the amazing artists whose work is featured. What I'm getting at is that I thought I might create a playlist with the whole video soundtrack in order, so the people who have mentioned it, like this guy, who screenshotted the whole list in the credits to listen to, can find and enjoy the excellent music from so many talented artists that I'm lucky to be able to use to elevate my work. PD Cypher says,
how does it feel to have lived long enough to see all of your favorite franchises go down in flames?
Feels great.
And yeah, just wanted to include this one because a lot of the comments were people like me who are just very depressed and disconsolate at the infinite mishandling of Halo. Get it? And this guy coming through with the Red Letter Media quote just hits the nail on the head, really, because it's not just Halo. So this one can serve as the fitting summation of all of those kind of justifiably despondent comments. Oh, also this one made me laugh too. Laugh in a frantic attempt not to cry, I mean. The Custodians makes the case that Halo 5's story was better than Halo Infinite's. Both are downright abysmal, but Halo 5 at least functions as a sequel to Halo 4. Halo Infinite fails as a self-contained story, it fails as a soft reboot of the series, and it fails as a conclusion to the established narrative. Now, this comment I both agree and disagree with. I mean, let's preface from the jump before we get carried away with any Halo 5 revisionism. that game is so inferior to Infinite in so many ways, none more so than its story. But I fully get what this guy is saying here. I don't know if I'd prefer a game trying to do crazy shit and miserably failing, or succeeding in having a story that doesn't do anything or go anywhere. Infinite's gameplay is superior, yet it's far more repetitive. Halo 5 has more memorable set pieces, yet the story that accompanies them is insulting. Infinite's art style is immeasurably better, yet 5 has more visual variety. Maybe I need to do a similar analysis video on Halo 5 for its 10th birthday or something. Let me know if you'd want to see that, because yeah, I'm realizing these retrospective comparisons to Infinite are interesting for sure. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Halo cycle, but I'm trying really hard to not fall into the annoyingly accurate trap here. Now, these two are a couple of comments that I've used to amalgamate a common sentiment that I've picked up from viewers, that being that they don't buy the tech debt, or rather as it's been described by employees, tech bankruptcy, excuse that's been given for the long development and poor performance of Infinite. Skylancer727 says they don't believe a damn thing about the technical debt, with the engine being the problem, but rather its contractors, and iRunFastXC says it's a lazy cop-out, and that if Bungie could figure it out, why couldn't Microsoft? And again, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but what I can do is come to balanced conclusions based off the evidence I'm presented with, a lot of said evidence being trustworthy reporting from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, who talked to several developers who disclosed tech debt as a ginormous obstacle. Also, that one dude who says he worked on the game, assuming he's real, also reflected this. What also makes this substantial, reliable evidence all the more believable is the fact that you can just blatantly see it in the game. It looks great at points, of course, probably because a lot of talented engineers worked incredibly hard to force the engine to pull this off, but at others it does not look like a Series X title, especially in the open world, which is being reported that the engine was not optimized for handling. As for assuming they just should have been able to fix it because scrappy Bungie made it in the first place, well, tech debt is not made up by 343, it's a saying in programming for a reason, because of the web of increasingly untangleable issues it creates. Like this person replied, it's a world of difference from hacking something together from scratch and trying to reverse engineer that later on. So these dudes eating chips in a basement are the ones who took the quicker, easier route rather than the future-proofing one, probably because they themselves would have been working on what was, even by that time, old code, while likely under extreme pressure from Microsoft to get it done. They got away with it then and made it work, but you know, a decade plus later, the process of cheating the engine into submission was only going to get more and more unmanageable, and Infinite was the breaking point. Obviously, contractors coming in fresh and having to try and untangle this mess is impossible, and Microsoft are to blame for that, like you said, but again, you can't claim that's the real problem, like it's the only factor. It's not solely one or the other that's the reason for Infinite bad. The development was a multifaceted, intricate disaster, with so many different factors all influencing and inhibiting each other, and is that not just so much worse than a singular quote-unquote real reason? So no wonder they moved to Unreal Engine 5, and to address this guy's point about that, he's again saying it would be easier to patch old code rather than creating new code in Unreal, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, so I really have no authority here, but the obvious benefit Unreal affords, in my opinion, is that it's not unique to Halo. People from all over the world can now work on the series without having to come in and learn their unique Blam engine. They also now don't have to build and manage that engine themselves in-house. That's all done by Epic, who have far more resources at their disposal to deal with these issues. Sure, Unreal dates back to the 90s, but that's not Halo Studios' problem anymore. They're finally free from dealing, or rather failing to deal with that issue themselves. So again, despite it being a pivotal, extremely noteworthy factor, the sole issue wasn't contractors. Even permanent staff would have had a tough learning curve to be able to work within the old engine, and the switch to Unreal addresses and resolves several of the issues that tormented Infinite at once. Though, of course, the high turnover of contractors sadly isn't one. In fact, it means they can double down on that, if anything, because the engine won't be so much of a debilitating concern. So even though it was not an easy decision, and it came with the abandonment of Infinite's DLC, and it was a switch they decided against previously, it still surely would have been a no-brainer to move to Unreal. Phew, a long old double bill there. Let's move on to first name, last name, GZ8HY, who says, a live service game that will span a decade, made with temporary contractors not allowed to stay. Yeah, great observation, again, talking about those damn contractors. I love the irony of that. We want players to stay for years, but we couldn't possibly do the same with the people making the damn thing. No wonder the live service fell flat on its featureless face. RD Kirby N says, nah, the pilot's a real guy. He's just a dude, he's relatable, he wants nothing to do with this and wants out, but still, he comes along for the ride. And I'm pleased to see someone who likes the pilot because I really wanted to, and I did from the start with the game's excellent intro. I was fully bought in until I got kicked out by a barrage of boringness. But I'm glad someone got out of it what I was looking for because I love him as a concept. All they needed to do was have him do, I don't know, anything interesting. Still can't believe he gets kidnapped and doesn't speak to the villain. Such an open goal for an easy line to demonstrate development, but instead they twatted it into Rosette. I realised that comparably Johnson does exactly this in Halo 3 when he's captured because of course he does.
I'm in love with you, Johnson.
Could you imagine him not standing up to the Prophet and saying anything here? It'd be a massive missed opportunity. But I'm getting sidetracked again. My point was that I really wanted to like the pilots, and I'm pleased someone does.
Oh, yes. Take me, Johnson. I'm yours.
Clyde McTavish 3457 says, if there's a single thing that holds back Infinite's campaign, it's the single take over-the-shoulder view. It's way too formulaic. Shoot through a room, press button, have the weapon hop off your hand onto a podium, mind-numbing exposition from the weapon while the camera lazily pans around the weapon, and having Chief move in frame. Brute yells at you while the camera pans around, or Reshiram hologram barks at you. Rinse and repeat. Halo Infinite. I just really liked the way this guy described the cutscene process in Infinite, way more concise than how I managed to complain about it. It's just another ridiculous decision that impairs the supposedly infinite nature of the game by making it as intimate yet sterile as possible. Also, by the way, editing the video was a fucking unholy nightmare because all the cutscenes look the same, and all the missions look the same. I spent so long poring over hours and hours of footage, so I'd say I know the game far better than most, and yet I still sometimes can't identify which mission is which or where certain cutscenes take place within the story. Contrast that with my footage of previous games and I know what I'm looking at a glance. It's mental. Wesley Freeman 5918 says, I think we need to get past the idea that Halo is the best series of video games ever because it never really was. I get that a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia about Halo and stuff, but those games are mostly pew-pew shooty games, and so on. And yeah, I wanted to include this one because, well, I don't fully agree with it, but with so many of the franchises I love going down in flames, it's like I get gaslit into thinking they were never that good in the first place, and that maybe I'm the problem, not these countless basket cases. Maybe it's just a nostalgia-fueled, rose-tinted sentimentality that I look back on these series with. Maybe I wouldn't like them as much if I experienced them for the first time now, and yeah, that last one may play a part, but no, I can't let mishandled projects taint my perspective of the media I love. I revisit these things, and for example, that Halo trilogy still holds up now, and they are, in my opinion, excellent games. Imperfect for sure, but still really good, and whatever trash comes along afterwards shouldn't have the right to ruin that. But that's a whole other can of let go low worms. Let's get back to the Halo at hand, with Marty from Nebraska 1045, who says, why do we always need a fucking sidebar where the video creator tells us not to blame the people who worked on the game, that they're all wonderful people without flaws, and that all the blame falls squarely on nameless and faceless Microsoft employees? And to address that to start with, the reason I said that in the video is because Infinite has a lot of things I like and a lot of things I don't like. I don't know which devs are responsible for which, some of them probably responsible for both. Again, it's a nuanced, complicated issue where at 343 the many clearly suffered from the ineptitude and incompetence of the few. But still, no one at 343 wanted to make a bad game. It's not some conspiracy where they hate the fans and purposefully did the equivalent of spitting in your food, because no one wants to do that. Let's be real here. I know they'd have loved nothing more than to make the fans happy, but sadly too many of the decision makers above them have goals that appear to conflict with making the fans happy. So I can't morally make blanket statements saying they're all to blame because I know that's not true. I think maybe, in fairness, I was too keen on mentioning faceless Microsoft overlords while implying everyone at 343 is an angel. I probably should have worded it better, but instead of writing off an entire company, my blame was directed in how I criticized so many parts of the game. Those that made poor decisions, whether it's with the narrative, gameplay, or technical performance, were called out in the video through my criticism of their poor work, the same way I praise the abundant good work that's in the game. I don't know who did good or bad, so I have to treat them as a team, as a studio, and the overwhelming evidence when viewing them as a collective is that they're talented devs let down by incredibly poor management decisions, both from within 343 and from above them at Microsoft. And that's then backed up again by the actual people who worked there. It's evidence-based. I know that's not as easy or as satisfying to point the finger at these faceless decision makers as it is for the whole studio whose name is on the box, and it feels like they're out to get you, but that's not the case and it's complicated. I don't know why I keep expecting nuance from fucking YouTube comments, though I guess that's on me. Ultimately, there'll have been good decision makers and bad decision makers from top to bottom that were involved in Infinite, but at the end of the day, they are all human and it's just a video game. Doesn't make them exempt from the criticism of their work. Lord knows both 343 and Microsoft rightfully deserve plenty of it. That's why I made the video, but my point is that it's complicated and conflicting. So this is basically just a really long-winded way of me saying, criticize all you like, it's essential, but do so with empathy and be kind. Unless it's one of those inhuman higher-ups intent on impeding art in the pitiful pursuit of endless profits, then fuck those guys. I think my frustration is a lot of the comments that I got boiled down to, you're wrong, idiot. I know the one true reason Infinite is bad, but there is no one real reason. It's like looking at this tangled mess of wires and saying, I know which wire's responsible for that, but you can't. It's an indefinable, infested mass of terrible decisions going back years that all influence, intersect, and impact each other. And again, that is so much worse than just one problem. But yeah, thanks for writing in with such comments still. I genuinely do really appreciate it. But yeah, after that one, I think we need a quick fire round. In response to this one, yep, and you better believe I sure ain't reading that bloody book. This one is a really amusing and well-made point. It reminds me of a certain other sci-fi franchise, actually. This one came in hot off the presses while I was gathering these comments, and he wants Cortana to be more sexy. If you think this is frumpy, then I don't know what to tell you other than why does it matter? Yeah, Infinite's multiplayer is a lot of fun, although I enjoyed Halo 5's a lot but hated 4's, but Halo 5's had more content that released more frequently than with Infinite, so of course it died. They didn't add any content for 6 fucking months. Next one. This guy agrees with that and cool, glad you enjoyed the game. Yup. No. Yes. Cretin. Fair point. Wrong. What? Hell. Well, I guess I should probably elaborate more on this one. It's referring to the Xbox layoffs that are all seemingly to fund AI for Microsoft. I would like death, please. And oh, what's that? This news also came with the report that the next Halo game is in trouble, and the devs aren't happy with it? Good, yeah, great. Yeah, we're doing this all over again, aren't we? No, I'm good, yeah, I'm fine. Really, no, I'm not crying, I've got something in my eye, shut up, let's move on. Yeah, and here's an appropriate one to how I feel actually. What's the point as a Halo fan to suffer, apparently? Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. It's just rumored it's the most expensive game of all time. So far, GTA 6 is the most expensive. That is true, and it's all speculation when it comes to Infinite's budget, but if it's not the most expensive, it surely would have been one of them, that's for certain. And the difference between this and GTA 6, however, is that that game's not out yet, so I don't think it counts. Next commenter says, MCC is more Infinite than Infinite in terms of content and fun. Yeah, agreed, but don't forget they fucked that game up to start with as well. Next one. This is similar to what happened with Star Wars. Yeah, it honestly kind of is actually, and I did just bring up Andor, which I also made a video about. So why don't we talk about some Star Wars instead? It'll be nice to inject some positivity into this otherwise utterly miserable video, won't it? That'll be fun. So, if you haven't seen the video, I was discussing whether Andor is the best Star Wars has ever been. Fox E. Crow 3276 says that making the claim that Empire edges out Andor in terms of quality rings pretty hollow for me, to be honest. Empire is a fairy tale. This is sort of like asking whether Dark Knight is peak Batman or the 60s TV series. Empire and Andor take place in the same fictional universe, but this is the only respect in which they're comparable. Nostalgia is motivating the attempt to compare the two, meaning it's a bad faith comparison. This is a very reasonable argument. Comparing The Empire Strikes Back and Andor on an objective level is like comparing chalk and cheese. Obviously, Andor is superior in many ways because it's 40 years older, in the same way that the newest iPhone is unquestionably better than the first one. But that's why we judge these things based on the time they came out, the lasting impact they had, and how they've informed the products that have followed their legacy. So of course the comparison is nostalgia motivated, because when something is as iconic and legendary as Empire, it's earned it. The same thing applies to Bungie's Halo games. The thing with nostalgia is that it's entirely subjective, however, so for me Empire will probably never be topped, but that's just for me. It's my own twisted, warped perspective, but it's mine and mine alone. I'm not the kind of person that will be offended if you disagree with me, as this guy suggests with certain Star Wars fans who do definitely exist. These things are entirely up to you, and this video was me making my case for why Andor is logically and objectively the best. But when it comes to its meaning to me personally and its wider cultural impact, Empire just can't be topped. I don't know if people realise how insane it is they had to pull off a sequel to what was, at that point, the most successful movie in human history, and where a sequel usually would fall short, it instead completely blows the original out the water and improves upon it in every feasible way, and in my opinion is more iconic and mythologized than the first. There would be no Star Wars in the way we know it now as a global franchise if only the first film was a success. Empire was the one that mattered most. That's all I'll say for now, because I may or may not be working on a long-ass video akin to the Infinite one all about just how mental the success of Empire is, going into unparalleled detail about production and analysing everything on screen, so people can look forward to seeing that in several years probably. As my next really long-form video after Infinite, hopefully it too can be my own Empire and absolutely blow my first one out the water in terms of quality. That's what I'm trying for anyway. The next one is from Polar Express 1110, who says, so let me get this straight. Ewoks, Jawas, Wookiees, Sand People, oversized slugs, droids, swamp and trash compactor monsters equals superb cinema. Meanwhile, Jar Jar Binks equals horrible crime against humanity. Do I have this right? I love it all. Awesome. Especially when people seem to forget what was in all the first 3 Star Wars movies. But don't worry, I have not forgotten, not at all. The difference between Jar Jar and all of those things is that Jawas, Sand People, whatever, aren't the main characters in the film with as much screen time as Jar Jar, who we all know is in fact the key to all of this. Jar Jar is a horrible crime against humanity, alright? And seeing people go easy on him over time, it's just made me double down on my hatred for this character. And I'll reaffirm that I mean hatred for his character, not any of the people involved in his creation. Not even any shade is directed towards them at this point. Let bygones be bygones. But that doesn't stop him still being the most ridiculous, insane character ever put on screen. So comparing him to anything kind of weird and wacky in the originals, I don't think is fair. If Jar Jar was in just 2 scenes in Phantom Menace, no one would care. But I'm still consistent, I promise, because the first one you mentioned, the Ewoks, are more comparable to Jar Jar with their presence in the script, and I really don't like them, and never really have since I was a kid. I don't hate the idea of them, but in execution, they are so goofy. It completely undercuts the otherwise far more serious and climactic tone of the film. It's like whiplash cutting between Luke confronting the Emperor and goofy teddy bear fights for babies. Also, obviously droids and a Wookiee are far more central to the originals than even Jar Jar in Phantom Menace, but I don't think that's a fair comparison either. Having robots and an alien in a sci-fi movie isn't that crazy, but having a cartoon alien get farted on and step in dog shit really is.
I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
This is very bad. Oh, go.
I know this seems like such a trite, like played out argument, complaining about Jar Jar in the prequels, like what fucking year is this? I know. But the reason I'm talking about it is because of this prequel renaissance where they seem to be treated as masterpieces now for some reason, and I find that really challenging. Because to start with, I was happy, I was a part of it. I grew up with these movies and recognized the positives they had at a time when every single aspect of them was written off as abysmal and to be shunned. However, now it's developed to an entirely contrary point where, at least from what I see, the prequels can do no wrong, and all of a sudden Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie. And that's absolutely fine if you feel that way, of course, but I think it's also fair to be balanced, and while it's nice to recognise the positives after so long, we can't forget just how awful those films are at points. And it's important to look at the originals in the same way too, of course. Let's not get too clouded or carried away by nostalgia and stay grounded here. And guess what? The same thing applies to Halo, like I said with the Halo cycle. One day, the sequels we all hate now will be getting the same exact treatment, just you wait. It's all down to these ever-shortening cycles of nostalgia. Sorry for getting a bit sidetracked there, I don't even know what my point is, but moving back to Andor, Severin7194 says, I'm delusional, because Andor wouldn't exist without the original trilogy. And this is a bizarre argument because, yeah, I'm not delusional, I actually agree with you. In fact, I literally just said the same thing a minute ago. Whereas it seems that while I'm saying Andor is great because of the originals, I think he's using them as an argument against its quality because he thinks it sucks. And I can't really argue too much with this because he doesn't elaborate on why, he just says it does, so fair enough I guess, but I'm not the one that's delusional. Again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, just like Nissi Calobonis, who says absolutely no. I'm assuming responding to the title of the video, is Andor the best Star Wars has ever been? He's saying no, it's a dark Star Wars spin-off, well written, but it's the opposite of everything Star Wars wanted to be. It's too dark, noir, serious, blah blah blah. The best is Empire, agreeing with me. We live in a dark age and people don't need this pessimistic tableau from Star Wars. And that's fair, but for me, in this somewhat dark age, something like Andor is exactly what we need. Like I say in the video, that doesn't mean Andor is what all Star Wars needs to be. In fact, I say the opposite, that there still needs to be a place for the campier, lighter tone we're used to, but where Andor excels, and where it feels closer to the spirit of the originals than anything else, is through those core themes that shine through despite the difference in tone, like Siegfried Newton again comes in to attest. Andor nails these essential feelings so well that the darker tone, while it's something I very much enjoy now I'm older, is almost irrelevant when comparing to the originals because it so effectively taps into the spirit of those films despite it. But I guess that's why it's nice that they can now hopefully make different Star Wars projects for everyone. I guess the challenge is to make them as good as Andor, because I still believe the less serious and lighter Star Wars potentially could be. So to be fair, all in all, the comments on the Andor video are as a whole extremely cordial and wholesome, with everyone just sharing their opinions on the show and whether they think it's the best Star Wars or not. And honestly, the same can mostly be said for the Halo Infinite video. As YouTube comment sections go, they've been way more chill than I would have expected, and I love my videos being a platform for civil discussion from viewers. It's awesome. So in that spirit, there is no animosity whatsoever towards the comments I disagreed with here. Like I said, I'm just responding with my own thoughts that have been festering since I made these videos in the hopes of keeping the discourse going. Long may it continue. So thank you for all of your comments, whether you're giving your thoughts on the topic of discussion, debating the points I made, or of course showing me the incredible support that so many people have. It means a lot for someone just getting started with this uploading nonsense, so it's absolutely awesome. Please keep it up. And let me know what you think of any of the points made in today's video. More normal videos are coming soon. If you somehow watched this far, make sure you like and subscribe, you know what to do, and I'll see you in a bit. Now cue that cheesy outro music, baby.